Well, hello, everybody. My name is Sam, and you are listening to the very first episode of Munchkin Musings, a new Wizard of Oz podcast. How are you doing? It's just me, everybody. A few of you may know me from my little Doctor Who podcast, Lollipop, and I have been sat on this idea. To be honest, a friend of mine, Hamish, put this bug in my head where they were saying I would love a little Wizard of Oz podcast I could listen to maybe once a month, where there's random camp silly things all throughout the Oziverse. The Oziverse? I was going to say the Ozsphere, but we're not talking about that yet. The Sphere of Oz, we're not going to that yet. All of the stuff around the world of the Wizard of Oz, and it just planted this seed. Maybe it was around the time of Wicked for Good coming out. Maybe it's just because I'm falling back into my hyperfixation on the Wizard of Oz. But I was like, I'm itching to do this now, and it's been sat with me for a month or so. And I was just like, you know what? Let's get the mic out. I'm no stranger to podcasting. I am no stranger to yapping. I'm no stranger to the Wizard of Oz. Let's just start talking. Let's get the mic and start talking. So I thought I'd introduce myself, do a little introductory episode before we kick off with the main attraction. Yeah, so my name's Sam, and I have been obsessed with the Wizard of Oz for as long as I can remember. It truly is my biggest love. I've been a member of various different fandoms as I've been growing up, and obviously most recently delving very deeply into the world of Doctor Who, which I adore. And I think there is a lot of crossover between fans of Doctor Who and fans of the Wizard of Oz. I think especially recently, Doctor Who's been very fantasy, and maybe it's reignited something in me. It reminded me of my true love. I've loved the Wizard of Oz since I was a little kid. I had my friend Emily growing up, and my first memory of the world of Oz is sitting in her bedroom. I think her mum was there as well, and we were watching the Wizard of Oz on VHS. She had this VHS tape of it, and I remember so vividly, I had a Pink Panther cartoon on before, and I did a little deep dive before recording this, and I was like, was there a VHS tape of the Wizard of Oz available in the UK that had a Pink Panther cartoon? And it did. I wasn't imagining it. It did. It was the 1997 UK VHS release, which is ironic. It was the year I was born. It was meant to be. Everyone was meant to be. And it had a short called Pink Panther Sherlock Pink from 1975. And I actually rewatched that. It's so funny to dive into a Wizard of Oz podcast and immediately start talking about Pink Panther. But I actually rewatched that little short before recording this. And it's funny. There are little things in there that I think they chose it for this particular VHS, I guess because it's Sherlock Holmes based, it's English, and it was a UK release, but there's also a bit where a tree comes to life, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the link to Oz. But yeah, no, I've loved the Wizard of Oz my whole life, and Dorothy especially was the character I was related to. I just wanted to be her. I wanted to live her life. I used to dress up with her. My mum had this brown scarf that I was used to wear on my head. I tied the bottom of it in knots to kind of look like her plaits. I had these orange socks with Chucky from the Rugrats on them, and I remember running around my house, must have maybe been like 4 or 5 years old, imagining they were my ruby slippers. It's so funny, to keep the scarf on my head, I used to wear a hat, and for some reason, I loved to dress up as a kid. I loved dressing up, and for some reason we had this sombrero, and there's all these photos of me as Dorothy, which I'm sure I'll post on this account, but in all of them, I'm wearing this sombrero, like it's me in blue, and I've got the makeup, and I've got my wig, or, scarf, and I've got Toto, and I'm just wearing this sombrero, and I don't know why my parents didn't think, maybe that doesn't go with the vibe. But yeah, the reason I wanted to call this pod Munchkin Musings even is in part because my dad growing up always used to call me Munchkin. He called me as Munchkin, and that just was a really sort of nice memory for me. And I would love to, as this podcast goes on, become a self-declared Oz historian. I remember watching the Angela Lansbury documentary about the making of the MGM film. They had these Oz historians come on to give their little bits of interview. And I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine that being your job? Like, you're an Oz historian, that's your whole job, that's amazing. I see people like Tori from the Oz vlog, and that now is her job. She left, I think, in June, her previous job, to focus solely on content. And I still think that's amazing and a pipe dream of mine. But yeah, I just think that was so cool. So I'd love to become somewhat of an Oz historian as this goes on, because there's a lot I need to learn. Like, my connection to Oz definitely came from the film. The film was what introduced me to the world. I definitely read the book as a kid, and I remember my parents reading it to me too. But only recently, actually, have I reread it and started reading the follow-ups, because I have attempted to read many of the books many times, but other than the first one, never really seen one the whole way through. And I want to earn that, as Glinda says, she says, I'm not good, but I want to be. I want to earn the title of Glinda the Good. I want to earn the title of Oz historian as this podcast goes through. But yeah, no, I remember reading the book as a kid. I had that. Did any of you have the Puffin Classics edition? It was like a tornado on the cover, and they had red sort of ruby slippers on there. They weren't silver. And that very much confused me when in every other adaptation they were silver. And I remember being at my grandparents' as a kid and catching the first half of Journey Back to Oz, the animated sequel from the 70s with Liza Minnelli playing Dorothy. And obviously this was a time where you didn't have catch up, you didn't have online access the way you do now. And I had to leave halfway through and I was fuming. I couldn't believe there was an animated Wizard of Oz sequel I'd never heard of. And I wasn't going to get to know how it finished. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I got to actually watch the second half of it. There was no YouTube then. And seeing how big the Oz world was so new to me at the time. I remember catching some of Return to Oz on TV and then shortly afterwards seeing the DVD cover for it in a W.H. Smith's. And, you know, on the original DVD cover for it, they kind of did a painting to emulate the Wizard of Oz DVD cover where they're going down the Yellow Brick Road with the Emerald City behind them. I just thought that was so cool. There was a sequel and that became so beloved by me as well. And to me, characters like TikTok and Jack Pumpkinhead from that film are as real a character and as true an original character as Dorothy or the Scarecrow is from the original Wizard of Oz. I also love drawing and art. I still do. I have a huge figurine collection that I'm looking at right now because I love to sculpt. I love to sculpt figurines and Oz is definitely my muse. And I have loads from the original film. I've got some from Return to Oz. Wicked is something that's slowly becoming a bigger collection as of late. I'll be sharing some of those on the socials as well. Yeah, I did loads of drawings as a kid. I quite recently was at home looking through my memory box I have when I was a kid and fell upon lots of drawings that I did of the Oz world as a child. So yeah, it's in my blood. It's in my blood. I remember actually I sculpted these little mini figures of the Wizard of Oz. It must have been about 2009. And I went to a Toby Carvery. Any international listeners might not know what that is, but for anyone in the UK, you know exactly what a Toby Carvery was. And I remember the waitress just like coming up to let us know if we wanted to get the carvery or take our drinks order or something. And I was like, look at these things I've made. I was trying to show her all these little figures from the Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz. And she was very sweet and, you know, amused me, and I probably just bugged her, but that was a sort of treasured memory for me. But yeah, I'm excited to learn more about it and delve myself deeply into the camp, fun, silly world of the Wizard of Oz that L. Frank Baum created. And like I said, it's just an excuse to kind of read the books and become a bit more of the community as well. I think there's a lot of camp to be found. Something I love on my Doctor Who podcast is finding the camp and silly in things. We have this game segment called Camp or Damp where we look through moments in an episode of Doctor Who we've just watched and say whether they were camp or whether they were damp. And I just think there's so much camp to be found. I myself am a proud member of the Alphabet Mafia, and I just think that there's such an inherent connection between being queer and loving the Wizard of Oz and connecting with it. I see myself as a true friend of Dorothy, and I'm excited to both learn about the history of Oz and also delve into the camp, of which there is plenty. So much as this is just a short introduction to myself and the podcast, my first proper episode will be delving into the original book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. I felt like I couldn't delve into all the other things before I had properly talked about the book that started it all. And from that already has sparked so many ideas of things that I want to look into and talk about. So yeah, get ready to listen to many, many more thoughts from the wannabe fourth member of the Lullaby League. I've made our social media handles. We are munchkin.musings on TikTok and Instagram. Probably not that much there, will be a lot more soon. And thank you for listening to this little introduction. I'm excited to dive into L. Frank Baum's first book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, very soon on Munchkin Musings.